You
we
know,
have these conversations in our friend circle, married people, and a lot of them, like, for some reason, a lot of black women are therapists, psychotherapists, and all of them,
we
and a
are.
lot of them are very accountable to the state of women in the world today, and they basically say, guard your husbands because half of the women in the United States are going to be single. And the one thing when we talked about earlier, women coming to the realization and them maturing in a certain type of way, is that their emptiness and their loneliness is going to be so bad that even civilized women are going to resort to taking another woman's man, right? Because that's how bad we see that it can happen for many women today, but that's going to be most women. It's like y'all are so highly competitive in that space that you are going to want to share a man, almost as if somebody who was opposed to polygamy will now be for it because she's so lonely. It's crazy.
Well, do you think that she's lonely just for a man or a particular man?
No, so what I'm saying is you don't have to be so particular if you're not desperate. The desperation is going to set in, and all of those
Listen,
particulars are going to go away.
I know too many old people that are okay, too many old women that are okay with not having a man. I know
Oh, they're
too.
getting the D from
Oh,
somewhere though.
let me just tell you this.
Miss Barbara is real. Miss
Let me just
Barbara is
say
real. She's
this.
getting the D.
And this was going to be another conversation, but since you brought it up, I actually went to Alabama, and I take my podcast with me. If there's an opportunity to learn, I want to learn from people, you know. And so what I've noticed is a lot of older women. I don't know whether they've outlived their husbands or whatever. They're single, they're divorced, whatever, or just not married. And I always ask, like, are you okay? Well, let me just put a reality. So I maybe asked 7 people, okay, 7 of these women. Don't think I asked the whole city, but I asked maybe 7. Were they looking for a man? They all were like, no. At this, no. No, 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 no. Whereas I did ask 3 men, and it seems to me, and I didn't ask them, let me just say this. I asked one man and I looked at the other 2. But it seems that men are quick to jump right. There's something happens to their wife, they jump right into another one. Either they die after their wife or they jump into another relationship with a woman. Whereas women are like, you know what? Maybe it's because they just like, oh, he was such the love of my life. I can't even see myself being with another person. Maybe that's why. But the
And
answer
if he
was,
Well,
threw a
it's also
party
it's
and
also because
he
women can't.
invited
go
everyone,
ahead,
It's
Nas, please, because I really did have these
you
conversations.
would
Go ahead,
see
Nas.
the
Look at it,
physical
Nas.
I,
signs.
again, I think we romanticize the past, right? Like those were with that older generation, those women had to get married to survive, right? They weren't going to be able to stay in their father's household for the rest of their lives. They weren't going to be able to get apartments on their own. Work was few and far between, so it was a necessity, right? And so a lot of these women were got married because they had to, right? So that's one. Two, um there was no like the division of labor was clear then, right? Like the men were not really, like, maybe they took care of the outside of the house or maintenance of it, but in terms of rearing of the children and the emotional labor, that solely fell on the women. And let's the conveniences we have now did not exist then, so that work was much more laborious then, right? There are a lot of women that were just like, if I don't have to sign up for that, I'm not doing that. And keep in mind, like when people get to a certain age, they're set in their routines. So finding a partner at that age means at your age, you're going to have to succumb to all of that when you've lived your life not having to do it, or now you've broken away from that. So I think with this generation, when they get to that age, I think it could possibly look different where women are not going to want to remain single because the conveniences are different, the lifestyle is different with partnership, like the setup is different. So I don't know that we can look at the past and be like, okay, well, in the future it's going to look exactly the same. I think it'll be different, right? I
I'm
think,
That's a good point.
yeah.
yeah, to
I'm just
what
wondering, have we evolved away from connection though, and like fulfillment, those types of things? Because I think that's what older women and men, I would say too, are going to that's really going to hit them when they are, 70s or 60s or 70s, because maybe their friends are they're with their families. Or I mean, when, and like you guys were saying, someone was saying earlier, you know, the material stuff. Oh, it was Marcus. Yeah, that stuff that only provides so much pleasure. And then if you're vacationing, well, you're getting older too, and that's really fun, and you know, you can look back on. But at the end of the day, when I think about, like, if on a Saturday night and you're 65 alone in your house because everyone's doing stuff, what are you gonna do?
And if
But
you
that's just me.
threw a party.
But I
You
think
know,
for the older generation too, like because they had more community, there was less
Mhm.
emphasis on connection with your partner. You could substitute that. But I think with so much individualism that's going on now, that connection is going to be so much more important as this generation ages. That if you don't have it, it's a bigger lack because friendships aren't as deep, because community isn't as rooted like that. And you see how much pressure it adds to relationships now that, you know, people are isolating once they're married, right? Because that's all I need. I don't have good friends. So I think it'll be really interesting to see what it looks like in another 20, 30 years.
but I mean, I think that too, you know, God forbid, we're assuming that even if you are married, your mate will still be around at that time.
Right.
So,
Oh,
because
for sure.
honest, nobody really, I mean, it's seldomly do two people die at the same time, you
Yeah.
know?
And
So
that's a good point.
even with that is even a risk at that point. So you just never know what the future may bring. Fortunately, hopefully we all live a very long, you know, long life. But I say, look, them old folks' homes might be popping a little bit.
Hey, I do hear that they get little crushes and stuff. But I wanted to ask.
You know,
I
I
worked
can't.
in a retirement home, and them
it's gonna
folks
be a
are still
party in the
dating.
retirement home. 'Cause
They
everybody's gonna have
still
their money,
dating.
their cash up, retirement home. Which one you
I
going?
I was gonna ask, you know, which was a good point about the community, but I wanted to get and anyone else's insight. Do you guys think that the habits of women specifically, but also men too, are even helping that lack of community now? Because it seems like people want that individualism more than anything. It's like at least their actions are reflecting. So, what do you guys think?
And my superpower is I'm from Montgomery, Alabama. And in Montgomery, Alabama, they believe in community. They know what each person is doing. My mom can tell you everybody's life on that street. It's embedded in them. That's just who they are. And
Okay.
it just is what it is. Now in Atlanta, it is quite different. Different story.
You in Atlanta?
I live in Atlanta.
Oh, okay, man. If I see you, then I'm gonna say something.
Cheeky, you know, my mind is so bad. If I see y'all probably wouldn't even you would have to recognize
Nah,
me.
trust me. No, when I went to the Lapeef meetup, when we saw each other at the Lapeef meetup, you didn't even recognize me. Nobody did.
Listen, I suck at this. So you have to come and say something like, hey, you know, like Cheeky. And I will, once you do that, I'll never forget. I promise you. I just suck at names and I suck at faces. I don't know. It's just weird. It's just my weakness.
I think we figured it out. I think women only got with men because they had to, and now we're starting to realize women don't really like men like
Now
that.
they get with men because they want to.
I don't even think that's happening. I think they're doing it now.
I think
I don't even think they're doing it now. I mean, again, you can't articles. The reason why I say these two things can't exist. We can't have this be the loneliest generation, the most sexless generation, and women are also getting together. Like this, all of these articles and stats aren't lining up.
So I think that they do because women are still getting into relationships. They're not getting to marriage. And that's where that becomes problematic.
They're getting in relationships with older men because it's the two most single. I've looked this up. The two most single people is older women and younger men, and the two most together are younger women and older men.
So are you saying like maybe somebody around 27 should be dating somebody in their late 30s?
Late 30s.
I don't think that's a big of an age. When I think about
Late.
older, I'm thinking significantly older. I always give a 10-year.
If you look at the stats on this, this is the most single men have ever been, and this is the most single older women have been. And then when you look at younger women, they're getting together, but it's apparently with older men.
That's not true, because I also saw a stat, and I need to find it, where a lot of Black women, especially, don't even get married into their late 40s and 50s for whatever reason. Like that, it was like a high percentage that.
But have you seen that? Have you seen that a lot of their spouses are younger than them? You seen that growing trend?
Well, I can't say I got a young one trying to get with a sister over here. So
We're saying. He's not a doctor, but he is pretty mature.
Young man.
Cheeky not a doctor, but he is pretty mature. He got a good level head on his shoulders. I mean,
it's
y'all in a lane.
He's not a doctor. The doctors
it's
that
so
I use.
crazy because in other cultures, like, I remember. let me tell you, I've had a time in my life. I had a fetish for women that were a little older and they're more mature than me. And when I was 19, I was dating a 26-year-old. 25, I was dating a 39-year-old. Like, and my mom hated it. And at first, I didn't think she'd find out, but somehow she found out. Sometimes a lot of these women worked for my dad, and I was managing his clubs during the summer.
That's how she found out.
That's how she found out. I know, but you expect these things to be on the low.
The strippers? You was dating the strippers?
No.
Why would he even date?
It's
Nigerian.
No.
This man is Nigerian. There's no way he was dating no strippers.
Yo, exactly. Thank you.
It was a
No way.
Marcus. The bartender, and then one was the door girl, the girl that worked the door collecting the money.